Go hi and welcome to World 411 News family. And today's topic is President Trump and the bounty, but also on Iran. Okay, first let's get into our first article. It says here, I'm sorry about that. First article. Iran says it wants to arrest President Trump over airstrikes that killed top general, reports. Iranian officials said this week they have issued an arrest warrant for President Donald Trump, in response to a January airstrike that killed General Qasem Soleimani, according to multiple news reports. The warrant is essentially a symbolic gesture that doesn't carry any actual threat of the president's detainment. Iran previously vowed revenge for the heinous crime of the notorious Soleimani's killing, and the newly announced warrant further underlines tensions with the Trump administration. A prosecutor in Tehran, the country's capital, on Monday announced allegations against Trump of murder and terrorism charges, according to the Associated Press, citing state media. CNN, also quoting Iranian news media, reported that the president was being accused along with 35 others, though only Trump was named. Prosecutors there said they had asked for assistance from Interpol, the organizations that facilitates law enforcement work between countries, and they hoped Trump, 74, would be prosecuted as soon as he stands down from the presidency. An Interpol spokesperson did not confirm if Iranian authorities had made a request, but told people that such a request would be rejected because engaging in political intervention or activities is strictly forbidden. The White House did not comment. Soleimani, 62, died on January 3rd near Baghdad airport in a drone strike that reportedly killed 7 others, including his son-in-law. He was one of the Iran's most powerful military officials, whom the U.S. has said was responsible for deaths of hundreds of Americans. While he was popular in his home country as a resolute warrior, according to the New York Times, Soleimani was widely seen elsewhere as a ruthless leader of country's security forces and a shadowy figure behind campaigns of terrorism and violence elsewhere in the Middle East. Okay. So let's look at this next article. Okay, let's look at this one. Okay. Okay, intelligence on Russian bounty plot was included in the president's daily brief earlier this year, source says. Okay, let's listen to this.
At one time, fixed income was an expression. Now it's reality. Amazon Prime has this discount program. What is your reaction to that new reporting that we have coming in just in the last several minutes, that this information about bounties, Russian bounties on U.S. troops in Afghanistan, was included in the presidential's daily brief?
Well, the question is, was it in the briefing book or was it briefed to him? Because it's two separate things. You have a briefing book that goes out every day. It goes to cabinet level folks. And then typically what happens, as I understand it, I've never worked in the White House, is these intel agencies then basically take the most important parts of that and brief it verbally to the president. So that's the question. Everything I understand is that the president was not briefed about this. Now, if it was in his book, that's one thing, and maybe he didn't read it. Most presidents don't read the entire book every day. They rely on intel to brief them. So I think there's probably a lot more to that than just what the headline sounds like.
And Congressman, you were one of 8 Republican lawmakers briefed on this intelligence today. You said that this shouldn't have risen to the president's level at that point because there was conflicting intelligence. But shouldn't the commander-in-chief be briefed about a threat to U.S. troops, Russian bounties on U.S. troops, even if the intelligence gathering is still in progress or if there is conflicting information? It sounds serious enough where it should rise to the level of telling the president.
Yeah, so I don't think it shouldn't have been told to the president. But what I said and what I meant, if I didn't quite say it right, is there was conflicting evidence. So that's where you have to make a decision, especially on something as big as Russia. Do you want to present the president with the idea that Russia's put bounties out on U.S. troops if you don't fully know yet, and if there's conflicting intelligence, or is it better to gather the rest of that? We're in a gathering phase, and now with this story out there, obviously, I think some of those trails may be wiped up if, in fact, it's true. And so, but I think that's a question for who makes the decisions to brief the president on what. That's typically a career person, but it's not a scandal and the point of the president knew and he didn't do anything about it. The real issue here, though, is if it's true, and we know that the Russians have meddled in Afghanistan.
The president did not know about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been told. If I was told inaccurately, then no. But I think he wasn't briefed on it, that's for sure, and from what I'm told. So, but I do know that, look, if the Russians, in fact, and they have meddled in Afghanistan for quite some time, if they were doing this, let's let this come out, and then the president needs to take aggressive action at that point. But you can't really do it if you don't know.
Right, but don't you think that this is so serious, Congressman, the Russians putting bounties on U.S. troops in Afghanistan? If you were in that situation, wouldn't you have briefed the president about this?
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, I'm a Russia hawk, right? But I also know what the intelligence was. I know what the conflicts were. I can't say them here. And I can tell you it's a tough decision that you have to make at that point, because it's not just cut and dry. It's not, you're not reading Vladimir Putin's book where he wrote that he's put a bounty out. There's an art to this. So the question is, when do you bring it up? That was a decision made not by the president, not by anybody political, by career people who make the decision on what they want to highlight to the president. So,
and let me ask you this, Congressman, because you were among the Republicans who were briefed on this earlier today. How is it that no Democratic lawmakers were briefed on this? Doesn't that politicize this entire situation when the Republicans in the House up on Capitol Hill are briefed on this before Democrats?
Yeah, you'll have to ask Steny Hoyer, because last night Mark Meadows called him and invited him to the briefing and to do a briefing. In fact, I guess they're now doing it tomorrow morning. But as of our briefing, he made it clear that he hadn't heard back from Steny Hoyer. So, look, if somebody wants to use this as a political thing, it's fine. Everything's political nowadays. Where I'm at is we need to let this process work and get to an answer.
You say everything is political nowadays, but there's nothing political about the Russians putting bounties
that's my
on
point.
the heads of U.S. Forces in Afghanistan. Isn't this the type of situation where it shouldn't be red state versus blue state?
I fully agree.
The Republicans and Democrats should have been brought up to the White House and briefed on this.
I fully agree. We were brought up. The Democrats were offered, and they didn't go. Steny Hoyer didn't respond. That's a question for him. It's not a question for me. From what I understand, too, they've now decided to do it tomorrow morning. So hopefully they see the same thing we did, and we'll all come out and look at this and say we're united against any Russian threat to the United States.
And you feel the president is in that category as well?
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
So the intelligence that assessed there was an effort by a Russian military intelligence unit to pay the Taliban to kill U.S. soldiers was included in one of President Donald Trump's daily briefings on intelligence matters sometime in the spring according to the U.S. official with direct knowledge of the latest information. That assessment, the source said, was backed up by several pieces of information that supported the view that there was an effort by Russian intelligence unit, the GRU, to pay bounties to kill U.S. soldiers, including interrogation of Taliban detainees and electronic eavesdropping. The source said there was some other information that did not corroborate this view, but said nonetheless this was a big deal. When it's about U.S. troops, you go after it 100% with everything you got. The New York Times reported Monday night that the intelligence had been included in a written version of President's daily brief in late February. Trump is not known to fully or regularly read the president's daily brief, something that is very well known within the White House. He is instead orally briefed 2 or 3 times a week by his intelligence officials. The White House maintains he was not briefed about this in the oral session. The information was serious enough. The National Security Council staff held a meeting during the spring to discuss possible response options, including sanctions. If the intelligence developed to the point it was deemed ready to take to the president for any possible action, the official said. Pressed on Monday whether the information was included in the president's daily brief, the written document that includes the intelligence community more important and urgent information. White House Press Secretary Kelly McEnany said only that Trump was not personally briefed. Trump also claimed in Sunday's evening tweet, Intel just reported to me that they did not find this information credible and therefore did not report it to me or at VP. The U.S. intelligence community and military are investigating to see if there is further corroboration and if the National Security Council staff can recommend response options. The source said the White House is now claiming the leak will ruin the opportunity to get a real answer. There is no consensus within the intelligence community about whether Russia offered a pay bounties to the Taliban for killing American troops. McKinney said there is dissent within the intelligence community about the intelligence, which she insisted had not reached Trump's desk because it wasn't verified. The source tells CNN that intelligence of this nature with risk to U.S. troops would be assumed to be true until known otherwise. You see, I agree with this statement. You always believe something to be true until it's proven otherwise. You see, any other thing they do this with, like they're selective in their minds on what they do this with. Things, you know. So I would pretty much say that they're their own worst enemies in the mind when it comes down to it, because it's the cardinal mind that is fallible. It's very fallible. And we see it here. We can see it in many things. You can really see how it's self-destructible. Now, I'm going to get into the next article, but I'm going to put these articles in the link. below. Okay, this article is saying that Trump got written briefings in February on possible Russian bounties, official says. The investigation into Russia's suspected operation is said to focus in part on the killings of 3 Marines in a truck bombing last year, official says. I didn't know about that. Let me see, this is the... Okay, it says the site of an attack in April 2019 in which 3 American service members were killed near Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. Yeah, I was stationed in this, pretty much in this area, Bagram and Kabul. So American officials provided a written briefing in late February to President Trump, laying out their conclusion that Russian military intelligence unit offered and paid bounties to Taliban militants to kill U.S. and coalition troops in Afghanistan. 2 officials familiar with that
But what's happened with small business has happened with everything else.
Familiar with the matter, said the investigation into the suspected Russian covert operation to insensitivize such killings has focused in part on an April 29th car bombing that killed 3 Marines as one such potential attack. According to multiple officials familiar with the matter, the new information emerged as the White House tried on Monday to play down the intelligence. Okay, so family, this happened in 2019 though. So this means this information should have been important to the fact that how are soldiers being killed over there like that. That should have been something to look at. And because of the mind does not work. The mind is not going to be perfect when you're in the cardinal mind. You got to realize that. We're always going to have war. We're always going to have just not a straight. We think it's sanity, but it's insanity that we're dealing with. That's why I say we don't live in a civilization. We live in uncivilized. Because we live in left part of the brain, and they want you stuck in the left part of the brain along with them. But all the while, they want to find a way to get to where you are. They want the capabilities for themselves to escape this reality. I was watching a film called The Visit, and it's like a documentary. And it really gives you some insight to, and it kind of, if you're in the position I'm in, where I'm aware of there's only 2 worlds, there's the cardinal and the spiritual. And of course, the cardinal mind, if you're stuck in the cardinal mind, you never have the experience as we do. We have the Akashic records. So we have the experience, we have the bloodline, we have the connection. So we know about that world, the other world. They don't know. So for them, it's like spaceships, UFOs, and an unknown world that they can't get to. So hopefully with that insight, you can look at some, I'm going to also put this in the description, but hopefully with some insight, you can go and check out and see how you view movies like these, The Visit, and because you can see it from a different perspective. We can get out of the trying to relate perspective or be in the carnal mind and come out of the carnal mind and go into our other part of ourselves and realize that we are extraterrestrial to this planet. And till next time, family, with that said, true love, real peace, and the higher self within you. That's so. I will be on later on. So probably around, hopefully around maybe 7 or 8, between 7 and 8. So peace.